Thank you for watching this video. In this video I want to talk about a subject someone requested of me to make a second video about, and that's how to disarm the spirit of death. If you haven't watched that video, which I now renamed part 1, watch it before continuing watching this one. Okay? So I'm not going to repeat everything in this video. In this video I want to expand on how to disarm the spirit of death. Look, when something happens, and I mean this, when something happens, begin to ask questions. Because that is what a lot of folks don't do. They don't ask any questions. Okay, I'm going to give parables now to illustrate it to you. You arrive at home from work. Your wife tells you, honey, there's something I need to tell you. You say, what's going on? You notice that her face is sad, and you just ask, honey, what's up, what's up? And she tells you, my brother has cancer. And you think, what? The cancer is in a late stage already, he's about to die. And your wife is sad, she cries about it, so you think, okay, what to do now? But then your son, your teenage son, who's spiritually more mature than you, asks, Dad, is Uncle Bart the first one to die of cancer in this family? From mother's side, from side of mom. And you say, how should I know that? And then your son tells you, but Dad, you married mom, right? Didn't you investigate about her family background and of that? And then you think, oh, maybe I should have done that. But of course you want to play tough before your son. You say, young man, don't have a big mouth, mind your own business. You try to save yourself. No, that's pride. That's something you need to unlearn. Because that teenage son, who's spiritually more mature than you, is showing you what's going on. So now you decide to check into the family. You visit your parents-in-law. And your mother-in-law tells you that death by cancer, or cancer, it depends on the English dialect, but I'm going to use the word cancer here. I mean, that's, okay, that pronunciation. Your mother-in-law tells you that cancer is a main cause of death in the family. And you think, huh? You gotta be kidding me. But then, you start looking at the data and you realize that a lot of people on that side of the family, because that family used to live in an extended village, so everyone in that village was related to one another for over 200 years, and you realize that most of those people died without cancer around age 45. And then you realize, hold on a minute, this is a pattern indeed. Now what's going on now? 220 years ago, when that village was founded, the people that migrated over there became the target of collective witchcraft. They were targeted due to jealousy and envy. And the violence that affected them caused them to develop dysfunction in their body, in other words, cancer, and they died. And because they all got used to a toxic climate, they all grew up in a toxic climate, and they reproduced a toxic climate in the next generations. You know what I'm saying? So, after a while, it has become the norm that people grew up in a toxic family, in a toxic household, even though they didn't knew it was toxic, and because of that, people had a lot of stress that caused dysfunction in their body, which led to cancer. And the spirit of death is the entity that makes sure that people from that clan, if you want to call them that way, remain stuck in this pattern of premature death. So that brother-in-law of yours, who's dying of cancer now, is the 48th of that family to die at such a young age of cancer. So what you should do now is realize that there is a pattern here and break the pattern. How do you do that? First, you acknowledge there's a pattern. You got to be real. Secondly, you realize that it's something generational. So it's not something, so you can break it, but it's going to be resistance in breaking the pattern. So what you realize that you can't deliver everyone from the pattern, you just assault the pattern. So you begin to pray. In Jesus Christ's mighty name, I command cancer to depart from You fill in the blanks, whoever it concerns. And you decree that every stronghold of sickness is broken from that individual's life. You also decree the same on the relatives. And then you decree fire, fierce fire, on all witchcraft and all voodoo strongholds, or all paranormal strongholds that are keeping that family, that group of people in poverty. And while you're doing this, you'll notice that from that same family that you're praying for, whether it's your own family or your family-in-law, there's going to be resistance against you. Why? Because there are people who don't want to be free, just want to be relieved. So they are stakeholders of the darkness, and now they're exposed. So now you move yourself away from them so that they won't charge you with their danger, because they don't want any deliverance, they just want to be relieved. So they're going to charge others with their danger. And that's how you keep praying, okay? You drive out the power of sickness, and with that, the sickness disappears. Now, there are going to be people who themselves are stakeholders in darkness, and therefore they perish by their own effort. They're self-destructive. Is that you doing that? No. You can hinder the self-destruction through prayer, and you should do that. But you cannot free them from something they don't want to face. You can't do that. So recognize that. So, I explained that with that parable I just gave on to you. Now there's another parable. Let's say that you are from a town or a neighborhood, but most people in the town or neighborhood, they suffer from chronic poverty. No matter how high their academic degree is, they always, and I say, they always face poverty one way or the other. And then you sit down and think. From the people in this town, there are like 4 folks that moved out of the town and have returned, and they have, as you could say, according to the world standards, a good life. But then you look at those people that are not haunted by this chronic poverty. What do? They broke all contact with people from that town. They grew up in a town, they have family over there, they have friends over there, people they went to school with, they went to their jobs over there, they have a lot of memories over there, but they're not over there anymore. Why not? Because those 4 people that left the town saw that something was haunting the town, and the people there kept it going. They were stakeholders of that self-destruction. So they realized that for them to be free from that self-destruction, they need to be delivered from that self-destruction, and you can't be delivered from something you sponsor. Okay, let me say it one more time. You can't be delivered from something you sponsor. So, those 4 folks, they're just strangers to one another, they know one another. Each one of them saw this and they left. They took action, and they began to rewire how they think in their head. Instead of always expecting the worst or always expecting that you only have a paycheck, they began to think in terms of abundance. They began to speak in terms of abundance. So instead of saying how much does it cost, they would say how cheap is it? It's just you may think it's just a choice of words. No. When you say how much does it cost, it means it costs you. It means that there is a shortage. So you imply a shortage when you ask how much does it cost. Even though it's a common thing how to ask what the price of something is, the way you ask the question implies that you expect lack. And the more you repeat it to yourself, you build up a pattern of lack in your mind. And this becomes a hold that demon spirits have on you. So those 4 folks decided, you know what, we're going to speak different, and eventually we'll think different. We've been conditioned by repetition, so now we're going to unlearn things through repetition. So they began to ask, how cheap is it? If one of them was to meet someone, let's say for a date, instead of thinking, oh, he might reject me, or she might reject me, or she may already have a boyfriend, they imagined the best scenarios possible, and they realized even if this scenario doesn't happen, there are better scenarios for me. So the way they spoke and the way they thought, they rewired it. It wasn't easy, but they did it. And that's how they drove away darkness from within them and from around them. But when they did that, those same folks from that town that suffers chronic poverty began to remind them of reality, saying you're from a poor part of Chicago, or you're from the hood, or man, you're unrealistic thinking you're going to have your own corporation, going to serve around the world. Man, you probably will have a 9-to-5 job, or you'll end up homeless on the street, or you'll end up in welfare somewhere. So they began to use suggestive witchcraft on them. So those 4 folks that have a relative good life now, not only did they remove themselves from that toxic environment, they cut ties with anyone that uses suggestive witchcraft on them. Now look, you first lower contact with someone that operates suggestive witchcraft, because often they're not aware of it themselves. But when you realize that they really have no intention to be delivered, then realize that they have a narcissistic attitude, they don't care how they impact others, just want to be relieved, just want to be left alone. If that's the case, you lower contact and eventually you break all contact, because such folks will only transfer violence onto you. I've spoken about that also. Realize that the spirit of death needs your compliance for it to operate. Now, there are people that are killed by the spirit, okay, and they weren't aware it was the spirit of death operating. So let me explain what I mean with compliance. Anytime you tolerate suggestive witchcraft towards you, or anytime you enable negative expectations that have no base in reality, you are enabling the spirit of death. You are operating in a negative. That means you are financing paranormal activity. That's what you're doing. So what do? You speak different, you think different, and eventually you will behave and process things differently. Look, I'm not a Greek speaker that I speak very fluently, like some of the speaking pastors are doing, but that's not my anointing. But first of all, they don't have an anointing, they have a charm. You want to speak differently, you want to think differently, and eventually process things differently. Therefore, realize that for the spirit of death to be disarmed in relationship to you, you need to go to the root. And the root is agreeing with expectations that don't add up. That family that I spoke about in the beginning of this video, in that parable, they developed an expectation that cancer is just a part of life, that you can get cancer, yeah, it just happens and you just have to deal with it. They became used to people dying prematurely due to cancer, because it happens so often. This pattern in their thinking enabled the spirit of death to use sickness demons to take people out. Or in that other parable that I gave on to you, yeah, in this town, folks got used to poverty so much that they thought poverty was reality. Anyone that wanted to have an abundant life, they considered crazy. And they resisted they resisted everyone. They became violent against anyone who questioned the status quo, which was that poverty was the norm, or that some relief of poverty is the only thing you could reach. It's as far as you could reach. So their expectations were rooted in trauma. Their expectations were rooted in relief seeking. Their expectations were rooted in avoiding, in escaping. So it's all fear-based. So for them to be freed from the spirit of death, they need to give up all those expectations and learn to process things in a Christ-centered manner. I'm on south now, as you can see. And there's a subway that's departing. I decided to record this video outside. First of all, it's not that cold at the moment. And secondly, I'm not afraid. When you look around me now, there's almost no one on the streets. And it's not only because of the so-called late hour. A lot of folks are, as I would say, They're scared of walking outside at night because something bad may happen. So look at this, there's almost nobody outside, okay? Yet, they're afraid something bad may happen. Who's going to do something bad to them if there's almost no one on the street? You see how this is also a kind of fearful thinking that people have that they don't question. And by doing this, they enable crime. Because now, if someone has to come home late, go to work, and they cry for help because there's almost no one on the street, everyone's inside, criminals can easily do their thing. And then, when bad stuff do happen, the government comes with spy cams, and then they can complain about their privacy. But they're not willing to pay attention to their community. If they paid attention to the community, you wouldn't need any spy cams to keep criminals in check, because the criminals would realize, we can't do much around here because you never know who's watching. Okay. I don't want to make this video too long. First of all, there's a 20 minutes limit for the clips on this camcorder. Just realize that the spirit of death will continue to issue threats, and it will continue as a chief debt collector to force bondage onto folks unless believers stop him. Think about King Ahab and his wife Jezebel. Well, not the demonic entity Jezebel, but the wife of Ahab, who was named after that demonic entity. That couple, together with the prophets of Baal, they were hunting and killing the believers back then. Elijah stood up. Elijah made plain, not anymore. He took supernatural action against them. Was it easy? No, but he took action. He was active. Yes, he was a human being. Yes, he had weaknesses. And you can read about how he even thought that his life was worthless when he didn't notice any immediate results. Yes, you can read about it. But still, despite that, he was active, he was alert. He said, no more. And sadly, well, let me say not sadly, I would say unfortunately, it often happens that it's only when things have gone way out of hand, when too many corpses are found, that people can realize that something needs to be done. And even then, there are not men that say, enough. Well, I'm one of those that say, enough. That's why I keep making these videos, to edify you and to educate you. The spirit of death isn't really the problem. Because when you walk by faith, that spirit is supposed to be an imposter. Those evil spirits get their fuel, their resource. Let me say this: those evil spirits can't do anything unless they can feed themselves with human energy. And the best way for demons to feed themselves out of human energy is when human beings are in a state of anxiety. So anyone who does not seek deliverance from this collective state of anxiety that the world is kept in is a stakeholder of the state of anxiety, therefore is a stakeholder of the self-destruction of mankind. I said it as it is. So when it comes down to it, it's the world's population itself that enables their own self-destruction, and they relieve themselves on scapegoats. Christ doesn't want believers to be part of that. That's why I'm telling you, walk by faith. Agree with Christ. You may not agree how I deliver my messages. I'm not even concerned myself with that. I want you to agree with Christ. Well, that's it for now. Be at peace.